Welcome back to Heightscast, the podcast of the Heights School. This is Rich Moss with you from the campus of the Heights in Potomac, Maryland. We're here to talk about the education and the formation of young men fully alive in the liberal arts tradition. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for continuing to share us, our mission, and our vision of education with your friends. We are profoundly, profoundly grateful for your attention, which we know is a valuable, valuable resource. I am delighted to welcome back to the podcast my friend and longtime colleague, many-time fellow interlocutor here on the podcast, Mr. Tom Steenson. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you, Rich.
Tom is a graduate of the Thomas Aquinas College in California and also has his master's degree from Catholic University of America. He's been here at the Heights since 2001.
A long time.
And in that time, teaching the entire time, fifth grade homeroom, which is awesome. And in addition to that, you teach, and I almost said you just started teaching, but no, you've been doing that for 10 years now?
Like a dozen years.
A dozen years. History of Western Thought, which is a capstone course for our graduating seniors. Everything from, where do you begin?
Plato and Aristotle, all the way through to the Regensburg Address. So ancient times to modern.
It's beautiful. So it's a great class, and Tom was one of the architects of the class, one of the original faculty, and still sustaining it today. So it's great to have you back, Tom. And we are fresh off the heels of the third quarter parent-teacher conferences. And heading into those conferences, I can't remember how this came about, but we were chatting or something, and perhaps I asked, gosh, there must be certain things that you find yourself saying a lot to parents.
Yes. Or
there must be certain things that sometimes are said and sometimes, you wish you had said them or whatever. And because I miss being in your parent-teacher conferences, Mr. Steenson, I'd like to go back and maybe on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Everyman or every boy, as it were, just step into a parent-teacher conference, which is entirely artificial because it's not centered around any particular boy specifically, but at the same time perhaps helpful because insofar as you've worked with so many students and so many parents, there's got to be just a lot of these messages that are helpful and perhaps could be even more helpful if they hit parents earlier on in their boys' development than fifth grade. So here we go into this very interesting, non-conventional parent-teacher conference. Hello, Mr. Steenson.
Mr. Moss, how are you? Do you know what's wrong with your son?
Yes,
how much time do you have? Okay.
I need you to help me figure it out. No.
He's a good boy.
So absolutely. No, blessed by good teachers. So let's begin as you kind of reflect on just your years since 2001 of parent-teacher conferences. What are some of your greatest hits? What are some of the messages that you just want to kind of hit again and again and again because they matter and they need to be heard? What are the things that you think parents need to hear?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. So coming into teaching, a lot of what I do, I didn't know that I would do. And a lot of things that I end up saying, I didn't know that I would say. Words of encouragement for parents, let me give that first. And the primary one is for the parents to trust their instincts. I find myself often in parent-teacher conferences encouraging mom and dad when they have a gut idea of something for their son. It's often in terms of the negative, not negative in a bad way, but they think maybe we should encourage him to find a better group of friends because maybe there's an influence there that's not doing too well for him, but we're not sure if we want to do that. Or we want to hold off on introducing certain things to our son in terms of technology, but we're afraid that maybe we're being too restrictive or something like that. And then I don't know in the families and the boys, and invariably, almost always I tell them, trust your instincts. They have good instincts about these things for their sons. They don't necessarily trust themselves at that point because they're afraid that they're being, again, too restrictive or maybe they're just not seeing things rightly. But man, I think when mom and dad have an instinct of what is going to be for the good for their child, more than anybody else, mom and dad see it right. And so I give them that encouragement. I want to give parents that encouragement in general. Trust your instincts when it comes to what's going to be for the best for your son, even if it seems in the short term to be a little painful.
That's such an important message because I think there's so much in us that is conditioned, and even if not conditioned, it's just how we are, We want to be liked by our kids. I'm sorry. We want our kids to like us. And we want harmony around the dining room table. We don't want the curmudgeon-y dinner. And so when you have to trust those instincts in a way that's unpopular, that's difficult, especially if you're unsure of what your instinct is. Because sometimes, the heart has reasons the mind can't know, right? You kind of have this hunch. And so I think, let me try this on. What do you think of this, where even sometimes you've got to go with your gut, and it's an instinct and you can't fully rationally describe it. But I think there's almost like a place for having confidence in your office, even if not in the perfection of the decision that you've made.
Right.
So,
right.
Child, Mom and I, we think we've prayed about it, we've thought about it, we believe this is the right call. We haven't done this before, but this is our decision.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to trust us on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
For sure. And because that gets to the idea that it's super helpful when you can explain things through, but sometimes you can't, because it's not just a mind thing, right? You haven't figured it out rationally all the way through, but your gut is telling you, we need to make a course correction here.
Yeah.
And so children don't need to always know the reason why. It's again helpful sometimes if they do, but they do need to know that mom and dad are in charge. And part of that authority in that office is then you need to make decisions that are for the best if they're unpopular, and that doesn't matter. And even if they're not fully explained all the way through, that's still fine, because the authority is the authority. And
what a great thing that you've got the time in your position, in your office, to have seen that so often those instincts really do work out.
Oh yeah.
So you have like a privileged perch to counsel these parents.
Yeah. It's like they see things and they don't even trust that they're seeing things, but they see them rightly. And so I just get to tell mom and dad, no, that's a good idea. Go with that. And it'll be good. I also tell mom and dad
what else?
that they should, that things often work out, right?
Yeah.
So, my realm isn't like, where are they going to end up, in the afterlife? Like, I don't know, right? But we want that to work out too. But regarding the kid's development and things, even if they seem behind in some ways, that he doesn't read as well, that works itself out. The kid isn't such a great student yet. That often works itself out. Spelling can be a great difficulty for a long time for boys and girls, but the more reading they do, the more spelling they can learn, and obviously there are principles and things that we teach too. Mm-hmm. But the concerns of, is my child going to be okay in the next 5 years? Those kinks, they fall away and you forget, and the kids come back later and they're much better students. And the things that we worry about in the moment for when we're parenting are often they find their ways through, and the kid works through it, and they grow and things get better. So mom and dad can be worried about how things will turn out. And again, it almost always, I get kids who are short sometimes, and I tell mom and dad or the kid, like, you're going to be taller than me. It's guaranteed. It always happens, right? So, hey, good. Be at least 5 foot something.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So words of encouragement, that's marvelous, and I'm sure really appreciated by so many people so often, including this podcast host right now. What else? What else can you tell us?
Yeah, I came up with a phrase of better late than early. So Aristotle says moral virtue has to do with the mean, the average, the middle. So we want to have things not too much or not too little, right? So whether it's sleep, you want to have the right amount of sleep, not too little sleep, not too much sleep. When we're eating food, we want to have the right amount of food, not too much, not too little. But he also says, if we make a mistake with respect to not hitting the mark, it's often in one direction rather than the other. So in America, we probably have people who eat, if they err in temperance with food, they probably eat too much and not eating too little. As adults, we probably don't get enough sleep rather than getting too much sleep. So too with parents when they're deciding for things for their kids. Say, when's Johnny going to get a phone? When's Johnny going to have a smartphone or something like that? I often see that the mistake is that things have happened too early and not too late. I'm not usually counseling parents, why does he not have a phone by now, right? Mm-hmm. But then you do have the counsel of, 6th grade boy doesn't need, shouldn't have a smartphone. So with respect to timing, if you're worried about if you're thinking about what the appropriate time would be, realize that in general, at least in society, we seem to err to put things in front of them too early rather than too late. So holding off on bigger access to the broader culture and its not so good formative elements, it's fine if we're waiting on that. And it's okay if in general the world thinks that this movie is going to be okay for a boy. If you see that it won't be, don't worry. He's going to be okay. It's better to wait, I think, in a lot of things.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Again, there's kind of like I think there's a parental FOMO. Our headmaster did a great podcast not too long ago on this question, again, revisiting the smartphone, and we don't want to beat the thing over and over and over again, but it's an important topic, and I think there's been just great strides made in a general understanding of how these things work, how they affect child development, and all the rest of it. So it's great to be able to tap into that and encourage people to be better late than early. It's a good line.
Good. Can I copyright that or something? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Fine. No one else has it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Trademark
I have an idea.
anyway.
You ready? Okay.
Yes.
Here's something that I see a lot, and I think it's not just a one particular thing, but it has a lot to do with the child's and the boys, especially academic development. Something that I encourage parents at back to school night and again throughout parent-teacher conferences, talking about sinking or swimming or building academic muscles. What I want for boys and what I see helps them to grow well. And mom and dad want the same thing, but they don't always know how they're going to get it for the boy. Do what you can to give your child independence and let them grow, which is to say, I've been thinking recently about my holding my own children as an infant days are over because all my kids are getting older and older. I have a number of kind of adult children now. But it's really natural. You love holding a child because they fit right in the crook of your neck, and it's a very beautiful, wonderful thing. And it's very good. God made it that way that it feels right to hold your child with you and have them near you. And yet, if you don't put them down, ever, and granted, you don't put the infant just down for no reason, but a child has to be on the floor and learn to scoot around and learn to move their arms and legs in certain ways. And if we do all of that for them, right, if we carry them all the time, they don't grow those muscles and they don't grow those motor skills. In fact, I've heard for people, be them even adolescents or adults who have traumatic brain injuries, where they lose memory and things, sometimes they have them crawl. And it's this left-right movement of the body that helps the brain to develop too. So we want to let our children grow in some ways by being a little bit apart from us, and they'll move on their own, and that'll be for their benefit. So also in the classroom, if mom and dad can try to help their child and their son to have more independence with respect to his work. So let's say Heights teachers will write the homework down on the board, and then the child has to write it down and bring it home. Mom and dad maybe want to help and check to see if the homework is being brought home, and if they have everything that they need, good. But check with the son first and foremost, right? So it's not a good idea to do an end around and find the teacher and say, what's the homework for tonight, right? Mom and dad want to know. Ask the boy. If the boy doesn't know, right, he should be accountable to his parents for what it is that he's doing for his work. And he should have a sense that he has ownership of his work. In mathematics particularly, I see this a lot, that granted, not every child is as mathematical as the others, and so they need help with their homework at times. That's understood. This is a very natural thing. This is a very natural part of human development. But if mom and dad want to help by doing the problems on the calculator and then telling him which ones he got wrong, then the boy doesn't know how to identify the ones that he got wrong. So if they want to help their son to do better in math, and that's good, and they should be able to help, and that's great, then sit down with him and show him how it is that you check any individual type of problem. And then have him do that work, and then you can watch over it with him, or you can do it with him for the first week or two. And then later, he's now learned how it is that he should check a certain type of problem. So you can say, do that on your own, right? You can kind of watch over and see that he's doing it well. And then a few weeks later, you can just tell him, make sure that you check over your work, and now he knows how to do it, and he has the tools to do that.
Yeah.
But he's able to grow in that way. So it's so much better. The more good independence that we can give the boys in those regards. They can grow those intellectual and academic muscles. And two, it has to do, as we've mentioned many times on the podcast, not just with the intellectual, but also with the development of the will. So he needs to do the things that he needs to do well and to learn.
Yeah. It's interesting. It in a certain way, this counsel can be almost weighed against, or maybe it complements the previous counsel, the idea that it's better late than early on one hand. On the other hand, you want your child to be slightly uncomfortable at times.
Right.
You want him to be in a situation where he is trying to lift a weight that maybe is just a little bit too heavy so that he can build the muscles that he needs. And it seems like as a society, we err the other way. Again, our headmaster's spoken about this. Jonathan Haidt wrote that book, Anxious Generation, which leverages social science to confirm a lot of the really important instincts that we have about childhood and technology and all the rest of it. But the idea that we would say, okay, we don't want you to miss out, so we're gonna go ahead and give you this browser in your pocket, or this endless stream of class group texting when you're whatever age.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we wouldn't want you to go and have this adventure or climb that tree or get the math problem wrong.
Yeah.
So it seems like as parents, we should really, I guess what I'm hearing you tell me and my spouse here about our imaginary child, who I wish we had, because it's great to be a parent in your classroom. But you're telling us that we need to really kind of cherish, or maybe we have to be on the lookout for those opportunities for our child to exercise his independent thought, independent judgment, independent will, and it's okay if he fails sometimes.
Oh, sure. And the failure can both be a learning experience in itself. The sink or swim, like, we don't really want kids to drown, right? We don't really teach kids that way. However, the same thing, like when we work through, we can talk through this with parents and say, well, Mr. Steenson, can you send home the homework every night on the computer so we all know what it is? Well, that's not such a good, why not? Well, then he won't be, what if he doesn't write it down? Then he might not bring home the right books. Okay, well, he might not bring home the right books, and we can still have an accountability. But then he might not be ready for class tomorrow. Okay, then he might not be ready. Like, there are always, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, even if he doesn't do well on a test. Like, we're not teaching for taking tests. We're teaching so he can learn. And sometimes the lesson is learned isn't just an academic lesson of I got the problems right, but if I don't do the things that I need to do to be prepared for what I know is coming, then it doesn't turn out that well.
Yeah.
And then, the secret is that grades don't often matter, right? And so even if we don't get such a good grade on a report card in the 5th grade, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So then that then also means, I heard about, I'd love to get this other person on for a podcast as well, but he runs a program for I guess fathers who are trying to be more crafty with their sons. So dads that are not quite as crafty, who want to do woodworking projects and things of that nature. But one of the points that he makes is that to do these projects with your son, to include your son in these projects, means implicitly that it's not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be as perfect.
Right.
So in that vein, I think of going to the grocery store. Your son says, hey, I need this treat for a class party that we're having.
Right.
And you're in a hurry, you got to go, and you could either pull in and race in yourself and get the thing, or you could send your boy in, with the debit card and say, hey, go make the purchase. And maybe he comes back and he says, I can't find it, or I couldn't figure out the PIN.
Yeah.
But those are all really good sacrifices to make. You sacrifice some efficiency in order to foster this sense of independence in the child. Another place that comes to me, I had an interesting conversation with some folks about this recently. I was curious about what you would say specifically, particularly you, in light of your experience. But another place where this happens is, let's say your child misses a day of school, right? And so you've had parents ask you to send home homework on a regular daily basis, even if the child is in school. Let's say your boy misses school, he's home sick. In that particular situation, the very efficient thing to do might be to send out a text to say, hey, somebody send us the homework, send me a picture of the spelling words. What would you counsel? I mean, how do you think that this boy who's missed school, he's feeling better, he's ready to go, he doesn't want to fall behind.
Sure.
What should he do?
Yeah, good question. So in fact, I'll tell my boys in the classroom as well, when we're writing down notes or something. So in the margin, I'm not writing this down, but in the margin, write today's date. You see it on the corner of the board over there. That way, if you're sick, then you know that you were sick on March 31st. And then you can ask somebody, did we get any notes that day, right? And so when the kid comes back in, then another kid has written down March 31st, and then he can write down and copy the notes when he comes in. Same thing happens with poetry. We memorize poetry at the Heights, and so we write the poem on the board, the boys write it down, and then later they'll memorize from what they've written down. And it's not as efficient for the boy to write it down and try to read what he wrote. It's a lot easier if mom or dad print it out and give him a printed copy. But then the boy doesn't get to exercise his will as much. And then the question comes, but he might write things down incorrectly. And that's true. But then I can help give him the skills for what should the boy do to make sure that he doesn't write it down incorrectly. So two kids can pair up after they've written the poem down, and one reads what he's written down aloud to the other who's reading silently. And when there's a discrepancy, they look back to the source to figure out how they got it wrong. Someone's wrong if they both have different things written down. Maybe one's wrong, maybe the other, maybe they're both wrong. So, the boy, you can have your son call. We used to have these telephones in the house for everyone to use. I don't know how many families have those anymore. We still do at my house, right? But they'll call and ask for the assignment from their peer, and that's a good thing too. That's part of what's behind the Heights directory.
Why? Why is that a good thing?
Well, instead of going through the medium of mom or dad, Mom, can you get my homework for me? And then she has somebody else take a picture and send it back to her, and then she can print it, right? So can the boy take ownership to call and ask, did you get the language arts notes today? Yes, I did. Can you read them to me over the phone? Again, it's slower. It's less efficient. The teacher should know, too. Like if he's getting notes from somebody over the phone, we have to check those to make sure. That's a thought I just had.
Yeah, no.
Maybe I should check over those for all those years.
Yeah.
But again, for the boy to get the sense that he owns the work that he does, that it's his work.
Yeah.
They speak about, and I'm not going to be the first person to say this on the podcast, but it's a great thing if someone turns in his own work and people know, he does work like that.
Right.
Like it's good, like it's clean, like it's neat, like it's the spelling's there.
Yeah.
I notice this is his because his has these good qualities.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I also like the it's good comments on the kids calling friends because it seems like so much of modern parenting seems to be eliminating friction from your child's life. And this is an exhortation to do the opposite, to create or to welcome some points of very natural friction. And gosh, I remember as a kid, there's just some awkward moments. And then I hear it too when people call my family, particularly younger people, asking for homework. Hello, Mr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
This is Johnny. May I please speak to,
What am I supposed to say, Mom?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
I don't know his first name.
Oh,
the dad? Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Are you PJ's dad? Okay, good.
Hello, PJ's dad. It's like a scene from Up. It's wonderful, and it's so awkward, but that's how, I think that's a good type of social friction.
Yeah.
That if you allow enough of that, it allows sort of just the emotional resilience to build up in the boy to, awkward social moments that can actually become moments of introduction and perhaps beginnings of relationship. So it's, if we want our kids to talk to people, we got to put them in positions where they talk to people.
Sure, that's great. Yeah. I have another idea.
I'll take all of the ideas.
Okay,
Tom,
good.
All of them.
Okay, so this one goes, beware the schedule. Okay. So, but a couple of different schedules. So first, your son's schedule. So I will see at times, it doesn't happen all the time, but I will see at times that the boy's just too busy, right? A colleague had a kid who once was excited because it rained, and that meant he didn't have to go to practice. And he was a good athlete, and he liked playing the sport, but he was so scheduled with, you'll have middle school kids with, we're not talking just practice at school because those happen during gym class, and so it's taking the time and the place of gym class. That's good. But outside of school, you've got like 5 practices a week or something. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So sometimes the boy is too busy. He doesn't have time, like downtime, as it were. In the Valley, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade here, we really try not to give as much homework so that the boys have time to have good hobbies. They have time to be outside and experience nature. They have time to be there with their families. They have time to read. if I'm loading him down with 3 hours of stuff a night, that's going to be all that he does when he's home, and that's unfortunate. So beware of your son's schedule so that he has time that's not always allotted to a particular thing, so he can have good things to do in that time that's a little bit more his.
Yeah.
I also want to counsel parents about their own, maybe not so much family schedule, but even mom's and dad's schedule. That, look, it's great that there's a mom and there's a dad and there's a family, and moms and dads are different and they have different things they're able to do for the family. And I get being busy and I get doing work, but sometimes, again, it turns out that the kids want to see mom and dad more and be with them more. Mm-hmm. So again, this better one way than the other. I don't usually have to tell parents you need to spend less time with your family, but sometimes it is you need to spend more time with your family. So when we get busy in the world, let's not forget that there's a lot of good that's right here at home in front of us. So don't be too busy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Andy Reid has mentioned a time or two just the importance of every once in a while looking at your calendar and just asking yourself, okay, of all the activities around this calendar, how many activities are for our whole family together?
Oh, wow.
And it seems like kind of a cool exercise to undertake. All right, final question, perhaps, unless you have others, but Mr. Steenson, my son does not read.
So it certainly helps for children to want to read. Finally, they want to often be like mom and dad. It's really funny, which is to say, we may see our own shortcomings as a parent, and they're always there, but the children don't see that. They see dad and they go, man, I want to be like him, right? I would tell my kids when they were young, you want to eat your vegetables and be big and strong like your dad, right? They're like, yeah, okay, so good. So if they see us read, especially reading for pleasure and not just reading something technically that we need for work, if they see us reading, they're way more likely to read on their own. Can we organize the house and the family library in such a way that we have books for them to read and we have a place that's nice and inviting for them to read? The environment matters. So those two things particularly can help a child to want to read at home. You can also lean on the expertise of the teacher because we've had so many boys come through the room, and so we know a certain age and a certain list of books well. So sometimes it does take a little bit of work to find a book or a series of books that will be of interest to the child. And that takes a while sometimes, but fine too, that the teachers can have conversations in mentoring and whatnot to try to understand better the books that the boy likes to read. We do a good job here at the Heights, especially in the classroom, in the books that we read with them. We have a lot of books that are interesting to boys, and so we have a little bit of expertise in that regard as well. So
yeah, no, those are awesome pointers. Seems like you've got to create a space where reading is even possible, and the screen kills that. And then you've got to put the types of books around that a boy would want to read. And then you've got to read yourself, got to lead the way. But I think that as a teacher, that's one of the things I really, really appreciated about my family being in your classroom is just the book recommendations. It's because I'm not I like to read a fair amount, but I don't necessarily. It's a different skill set to know. All right, what are the books that might appeal to this particular child or this particular age group? So that's a real gift of yours to us and our families. Well, brilliant. I think this is probably a good place to end. Kind of a neat moment here. We're here in the Heights Admission Studio, and we see a former student of ours, Con Megan, there behind the glass. University of Chicago extraordinaire, classicist.
I taught him.
Yes, and I was invited into your classroom to teach him United States history. I think.
Oh, we both taught him.
We both taught him.
Okay, and he turned out okay.
Yes. I taught him under your tutelage. So, Con, thanks for being here.
Good.
Thank you, Tom. It's been great.
Thanks for having me.
And so to support the work of Mr. Steenson in the Valley and his fellow faculty, to support the work of Con Megan and the entire Heights Forum team that does everything in our power to continue this mission of forming young men fully alive here on campus and beyond the walls of the campus through this podcast and other efforts, do please consider supporting the Heights financially. To do that, visit heightsforum.org. Click on Give. Everything you do is incredibly, incredibly appreciated. While you're there, you can also learn more about some of the upcoming events. We have the The Parents Conference coming up on April 12th. The theme is how to transfer the faith to your sons. So very important topic. You can learn more or register for that at heights.edu. Also this summer in June, we have the Teaching Essentials Workshop. This will be a small workshop for a small group of teachers offered by Mr. Steenson and our colleague, Mr. Austin Hatch. It should be a magnificent week for teaching men. So do join us. Do register if you'd like a spot, because they're going to go. They are going now, and we are going to cap that at 18 teachers. Finally, you can go ahead and mark your calendars for the annual conference here at the Heights for Teaching Men. This is going to be for everybody who's come in the past, everybody who wants to learn more about what we're up to, and everybody who just wants to share ideas, because there's so much that we learn from you guys when you come and spend time here. So that is going to be in November of 2025. It should be a great couple of days. We'll have more announcements about that coming up soon. But again, do visit heightsforum.org. Do support us if you can. Thanks for being a part of this community. We'll talk to you next week. Live high.